Well, I'm here today with Ali Iseman. She's the author of a Substack, Passport to Pleasure. She is a person that provides consultation about relationships. But Ali, you have a very interesting history that I suspect informs what you're doing now. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, I've certainly had quite a few chapters. And I think that what's been a wonderful kind of through line through everything I'm about to share has been the ability to really, they say hindsight is 2020. I like to say hindsight's 2021 at this point. 2020 was rough. But the through line of being able to incorporate the varied skills that I learned and understanding that I learned in each chapter of my life and really folding it into the next and has all of it has enabled me to do what I do now in the way that I do. So as far as, professional backgrounds, I've certainly, there's an eclectic journey there. I started off in entertainment. Excuse me. I was a television and film actor and then also became a screenwriter, mainly television there as well, which I still do on the side. A writer is a writer, whether it's Substack or screenwriting, primarily with a focus in television comedy. And that led me to be exposed to many, many interesting people and ways of life. And really, the work of performance and writing is really exploring the human condition and really understanding communication, relationship, understanding ourselves, how we relate to others, and how our circumstances inform all of that as well. So all of those skills also enabled me to do what I did as my day job when I was getting established before I was full-time in entertainment, which was in marketing. So when I first started, that was running, street teams, doing all the samples and the promos. I was managing tours, countrywide tours for, Toyota and folks like that doing, ride-alongs or test drives and, off-roading, stuff like that. So again, very, very interesting exposure to all manner of people and lifestyles. That specific tour was actually to all the state fairs around the country. So I got to really meet a lot of incredible people and again just get exposed to so many different ways of living, of loving, of communicating. And that's always been what's driven my work, whether it's writer, actor, marketing executive, which was my last role. I was a VP of marketing in a Mark Cuban company. All of that is again communication. Communication is how we relate with ourselves and therefore with each other. And that's what really brought me to this current chapter, which is bringing all of those skill sets together. I'm very well trained and well read in regards to inclusive relationship dynamics. So I work with couples on a coaching basis. I also offer courses and other resources through my Substack and my website to help people really design their relationship. I think of myself as like a relationship architect. The reality is we weren't given the tools and the skills that we need to build the relationships that we want and deserve. And so my goal is to offer that and provide that so that we can all live and love and relate the best way for ourselves and each other.
Well, and we met in a training session about Substack offered by somebody that's very good at it, Sarah Fay. We
Oh yeah.
met, and afterwards you said something very kind to me, and I
Oh,
appreciated that. And so I thought, well, I this person's very kind. I need to reach
oh,
out and learn more about what they do. Hence our conversation today. And so our first interaction was based upon a kindness from you,
yeah,
and we need so much more kindness in the world today, don't we?
yeah,
And
I
so
agree.
to get to what you're doing now, you provide people sort of the tools to design their relationships. You just said that,
Mhm,
design relationships. Can you tell
mhm.
me what you mean by that?
Absolutely. We're kind of taught, well, not, I should say, not even taught. There's this assumption, socially that you have relationships, you just have them, and you should know how to do that, and you should be fine. You probably had parents, they probably taught you, great communication skills. So you can probably have a really great relationship yourself, right? For most people, not really the case. Communication, openness, these are actual skill sets. So we're being given this really big disservice of this idea of relationship, friendship, romance, family, all relationship is this sort of like passive thing that just supposed to work, and we, laugh about the holidays are so hard, and, all of this. Meanwhile, look at the divorce rates and infidelity and just all these terrible, worsening issues that we're seeing. It's This is a skill set that we're not being taught. And it doesn't have to be this big, oh my God, where am I going to find the time? I have so much to, I've got 3 jobs and the kids and the da da da. It's a skill set that's incorporated into your life. So when I first started working on myself and my communication and how I relate to other people, every area of my life changed. My finances improved, my job possibilities increased, like everything opened up. So it's not just like, oh, I have to isolate and just work on my romantic partnership and like find the time. This is a skill set for your life. How you relate is how you relate. So when you're learning this, all of your relationships are going to improve. And when you actually understand all the types of relationships that are available to you, all the different ways we can build loving relationships, you can actually design a relationship that works for you instead of trying to fit yourself into a one size fits all box that really does.
Well, the one size fits all box is that, sort of the ideal, love story, high school sweethearts to marriage, and
Yeah.
everything's going to be perfect. And that's the sort of stereotypical relationship that really isn't stereotypical, is it?
And not common at all. It's important to talk about why we idealize these things. And something I like to say is it's important to remember that all the Disney movies and fairy tales all end at the beginning of the relationship. You're not actually seeing these people live lives together. It's just the high drama of how they connected and all of that. It's trauma bonding a lot of times, but we'll stay out of that. But it's important to remember that the relationship is the happily ever after. And so what are you doing to support that happily ever after?
Mhm.
Because you're
Well,
growing, you're changing. And that can actually, sorry to cut you off, but I think I just want to add this really quickly. There's a lot of fear that can get triggered in relationships. So we're always growing and changing, whether we're actively pursuing that or not, because of just the nature of how our brains work, how life works, or being exposed to new things. We can find new interests later in life. I never thought I'd be into, long bike rides. I didn't even enjoy short bike rides around my neighborhood. And now it's one of my favorite pastimes. We grow and we change, but sometimes especially when we get into relationships really young and we're not like ready for that, it can feel like abandonment from our partner. Like, oh, I thought I knew who you were. And now you're doing these other things, instead of allowing that to expose us to potentially new things and sharing new experiences with each other, which is what brings that novelty and excitement back into the relationship, rather than this fear of like, oh, you're leaving me because you're trying something new. It's both. We can try new things together and we might not like all the same things, but we're keeping things exciting and alive in our relationship as we're both growing and as our relationship is growing as well.
well, we're really in an experimental phase in the sense that for the vast majority of human history, women have been in many ways encouraged, forced into, a very strict patriarchal system
Mhm.
that was very oppressive, and that women were not, that they often had to tie themselves to a man just to survive because they didn't have other kinds of economic opportunities. And the
Mhm.
consequences for sex, for reproduction for women are incredible. Sex and reproduction are very costly for a woman, and they're not for a man. Now we have new reproductive freedoms, we have new birth control, we have increased economic power for women. But this is all just essentially in my lifetime, which is very
Mhm.
small, in this over the scale of human history. So there's got to be this new kind of explosion of freedom and opportunity that we might not even see. And you're helping, and you're sort of a tour guide to, the opportunities that are out there in relationships, and not just the traditional monogamous relationship that we're all encouraged to embrace. And and I'm happy to embrace. Um, I'm lucky, but other people have other options and they're doing different things, and you help them find something that works for them. Is that correct?
Yeah, very much so. And I love the way you phrased that too. It's you've chosen this and you and your partner are creating this together by choice. What you were just mentioning is what's called compulsory monogamy, which is when, primarily women really again we're subservient in so many ways because of those social structures, which are, to your point, changing dramatically in our lifetime right now. So our relationships are changing and what we're capable of is changing. And we're now able to be actual, really like partners. We can choose each other. And how incredible is that to know that your partner or your partners are choosing to be with you? Not that they have to be, that they have no other choice, that they need you, they want you. What an incredible gift to know that and to actively be able to make that choice every day in whatever relationship dynamic you've chosen to be in.
Well, in some of the relationships dynamics that you have written about and done interviews about that I've seen, they're very complex. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people, with multiple partners, and that seem to me, to me, my old guy perspective is they seem very perilous, and
Mm.
and you help people construct a structure that isn't perilous. I guess it's just my upbringing. And a lot of people that are probably watching this aren't used to talking about multiple partners and other kinds. And you've used some terminology that I don't even understand about different kinds of relationships. Can you sort of, I don't know, you have me at a point of deep ignorance such that I want to give you the opportunity to explain what you do and how you can help without even knowing about all that you're doing. Can you sort of give us a broad framework?
Yeah, and thank you for the invitation. I think ignorance is an opportunity. When we get curious, we get to learn more. And so thank you for the invitation. I would love to really quickly understand when you say perilous, and feeling that you know uh, a dyad or two people in a relationship together in a monogamous structure, you feel as not perilous versus multiple partners are perilous. Is that correct? Like perilous meaning threatening the stability of the relationship, the safety of the relationship, correct?
Yeah, I guess, but that's my thought that any kind of a different kind of arrangement, I think would really hurt the relationship that I value. But this is all, patriarchy speaking and, my Sunday school training speaking. And so I've got all of this big, you know, sort of intellectual structure around relationships about what is permissible and what is
Mm-hmm.
not permissible.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of is like a cage, but there's also a comfort in it that to step beyond that to me would seem perilous.
Okay, so like the risk factor of it.
Yeah.
Great. So I want to understand then. So no, not to understand. It's let's break that down then. So we're talking about relationship structures. So if the security and stability of a relationship was inherent to the structure alone, then why would we have the divorce rates that we have and the infidelity rates that we have and all manner of other things? We can leave it there for now. If it were just the structure that provided stability and safety, that wouldn't be the case. So what we're seeing is again that lack of that comfort, which is really complacency in a lot of ways. Oh, I have this label. Now what? I own you? No, we are autonomous human beings making decisions. But when there's that complacency that's brought on by compulsory monogamy, like this is the only relationship structure, now we're in it, we're done. We did it. We dated, we got engaged, we moved in together, we're married now, we've got kids, boom, it should all work. A relationship is an ongoing conversation, it's an ongoing agreement structure. You need to be checking in. There's a lot of skills involved in it. And again, it doesn't have to be crazy complex no matter how many or how few partners you have. It's all the same skills. So when you're developing those communication skills, when you're understanding that it's perfectly normal to still crave novelty, whether emotionally or sexually, whether you have one or more partners, that can be achieved multiple ways. Understanding your emotional and romantic needs, which are actually separate from your physical and sexual needs, understanding what those are helps you understand what you need and to communicate with your partner about that and create agreements that support it, whether monogamous or non-monogamous or anything in between. It's having that active conversation, having that self-awareness so that you can be the architect of your relationship. It's not the structure itself. It's the actual quality and the practice of relationship that gives you that safety and security.
Well, and you made a really good point in that framework that has been imposed on so many of us. You made a really good point that it doesn't work very well.
Yeah. And
Well,
it's okay. Look, I want to be really, really clear. Sorry to cut you off. And it does for some. It does. Monogamy is a perfectly healthy, reasonable choice for the people that are monoamorous and monosexual that only require one romantic and sexual partner. There are people like that, and they should be able to choose that and know in themselves that's why they're choosing it. And the people who aren't built that way should be able to build relationships that are just as healthy and stable, that work for them, where they're able to live in integrity, where they're able to practice clear and effective communication with their partner and take care of each other. That's only possible when we know all the options that are actually available rather than the illusion that is point blank not working for the majority of people.
one of the things that does seem to work for a lot of people is serial monogamy, or maybe serial
Serial
semi-monogamy.
non-monogamy. I was gonna say it's so the way we date. I love language. Like I love that you're getting into this with me. I'm gonna nerd out real quick. So what most people actually do is technically serial non-monogamy. Monogamy by definition is one partner, period. You meet your partner, that's it. That's your romantic sexual partner for life. Most of us have dated, whether multiple people at once or one person at a time. One person at a time would be serial. So they have multiple monogamous relationships in a row, which is really non-monogamy. It's serialized non-monogamy rather than simultaneous non-monogamy. So effectively, you can see how you can care about more than one person in your lifetime. And an example that I like to use when it comes to simultaneous non-monogamy is do you have multiple children? Which one's your favorite? You don't love the other ones, right?
Right.
Love doesn't work like
Right.
that.
Right. So, and we have all kinds of complex emotional relationships with people,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that society puts up sexual boundaries, and then there's certain expectations. And it's very interesting that these kinds of things that are imposed on us rarely get much thought. I mean, I certainly don't think about it very much, but we're sort of trained not to think about it. We're not, when there really is, as you're saying, there's paths to happiness and respect that are and that result in good relationships and pleasurable relationships that transcend, the traditional role, and you help people negotiate that
Mhm.
by giving them here's some guidelines, here's some things that have worked for other people that relate to respect, communication, intimacy, and all kinds of other variables that are going through your head right now that I don't know enough to think about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I work with people to first and foremost understand their needs and to separate what I call compound meanings. So what you just touched on is, we're taught that a lot of different things are synonyms for each other when they're not. A big one is love, sex, and commitment. Those are not synonyms. Those are ingredients in a relationship that you can choose to have. So for an example, your partner sexually desiring another person does not mean they love you less, doesn't even mean they desire you less. Those experiences chemically are yes ands in our body. I mean, I nerd out. I create a bunch of content, like video content as well, on my Substack and on my YouTube about just the science behind how we connect and how we relate as well. It's not a zero sum game. So if someone is experiencing more arousal, it's across the board. It's not being taken away from you to put somewhere else. But that's where the negotiations come in, about understanding what our needs are for ourselves so that we can determine what our boundaries are, which are really, boundaries are just the edges of our comfort zone. That's where we meet each other. There's a great quote from the poet Prentice Hemphill: boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and myself simultaneously. It's not a wall. It's not how we keep people out. It's how we show people how to care for us, and vice versa. So when we understand our needs, we break down all the compound meanings that have been impacting, and triggering our fears and help making us think, oh, you love me less because this. Once we understand all of that and what our partner needs, then we can start working on building a relationship agreement. So we figure out what is called your hierarchy of exclusivity for your emotional and romantic needs, and then your physical and sexual needs, and how much exclusivity you need within each of those to feel safe and fully expressed. And we do that with your partner as well. And then when we understand where you both fall on that, really, it's literally like a graph, with two planes, that will align you with what's called your ideal relationship structure. Now, these are all systems I've created to make it easier to break down. It may sound complex because, again, we're not taught any relationship skills, but this is something we need to go through to understand ourselves anyways. So once you understand your IRS, the friendly IRS, your ideal relationship structure, then you can create an actual relationship agreement, which we're taught is what a marriage contract is. A marriage contract, I don't know if you've read one recently, but it's about mergers and acquisitions. It's property ownership, inheritance, things like that. It has nothing to do with, hey, how do I feel, like you've heard me? How do I trust, what you're going to say? What are our agreements around our, safer sex practices? How do we relate with other people that aren't each other? Like, all of those are agreements that create our relationship. So that's the basic process that I walk people through. And that literal document, the relationship agreement, is something that guides you for the rest of your relationship. And you should be reviewing it and renewing it regularly. Because, like I said, it's totally normal and healthy to grow and change, and your relationship should grow and change along with you. So having that to touch base with, on a regular basis with your partner, again, it just creates that really lovely little boundary, that little container of your relationship, so that it doesn't have to feel like the rug's getting pulled out every time you need to talk about something new.
So this is sort of a simple comparison. It's like a person isn't pie, where somebody takes a slice and
Yeah.
it takes away from somebody else. It's just a bigger pie.
Yeah.
Is that right? You don't take
Yeah.
something away. You have a bigger.
There's not 100 love points, and I have to take five. But, like, again, which of your kids gets the most love point? That's just, love is an expansive chemical experience in our body. More is more. So there's actually a great study. I wish I could reference the people who actually did the study. I'll try and find it and send it to you. But on the topic of, for example, not to make anyone uncomfortable, the topic of masturbation is a big conversation. So, if I catch my partner masturbating, is that cheating? Because they're not sharing that energy with me, they're not doing that activity with me, and that's something we've agreed is for us. Well, it's proven now that the more desirous someone is, it's directly related to the desire in the relationship. So them wanting more, it's not because they don't want it with you or they can't with it. It's more is more in this part of our chemical makeup. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yes, it does. And so what you're talking about then, I mean, you would suggest is expanding oneself emotionally, romantically, sexually, and picking out the framework that brings you and your partner or partners the most comfort
Mm-hmm.
and inspiration and whatever, that transcends millennia of a rigid framework that is very
Mhm.
difficult in these times or any time to adhere to, correct?
Very much. It directly addresses an issue that I hear a lot. Everyone wants their partner to put in more effort. Well, we're being given lazy monogamy. Here, put this on. Now you have your relationship. If you want more effort, we need to put more effort into it. So that means figuring out which relationship structure is best for you and cultivating it. It can be fun. It should be fun. Ideally, this is fun. And to your point, it's about the stability and safety too. Like the way I like to say it, I say this two different ways. So I'll say it both. Hopefully, whoever needs to hear it, whichever way, it'll land. The way I like to say it is, if our world leaders were better fucked, we'd be less fucked. What I mean by that is if we all have better relationships that last longer, I believe we'll have a better world that lasts longer. To your first point, kindness. If we can't be kind to ourselves and really accept who we are and not beat ourselves up and, you know, think that we're broken and wrong because we like most people aren't fitting into this one version of something. How can we expect our world to be better? I mean, we're pitted against each other in our homes. Of course, there's the catastrophes that there are all over the world. It's partnership. So, to your point again about the structures we're kind of moving out of, the way I say it is relationship without freedom, relationship isn't partnership, it's ownership. So, if we want partners in our homes, we have to create an agreement structure around that so that we can both contribute or all contribute in the way that is most supportive and safe for everyone involved.
Well, I always like to close an interview with a question. Is there anything that I didn't know enough to ask, anything that you wish I would have asked, or anything that you'd like to close on? That was pretty darn good what you just delivered, but I want to make sure that you've said everything that you want to say.
Oh my gosh, I'll never be done. I love this subject so much. Hopefully it's very clearly evident how passionate I am about helping people really create the relationships that are best for them. I want everyone to experience the freedom that's possible with great communication, you know, unwavering trust. That takes development, right? And it's worth it. Every part of your life changes when you improve these skill sets. So yeah, there's so much more we could talk about. We could talk about compersion, just the opposite of jealousy. It's when you experience joy or pleasure from watching or hearing about your partner experience joy or pleasure with someone else. You know, think about when they get a raise at work. That's a win for everyone. That's not the only way that you can feel that. There are many, many ways to build that. So there's so many juicy things to explore when it comes to this. If I could leave your audience with anything, it's please know that being curious is a good thing. Being curious about something is not the same thing as jumping in. If you were curious to go swimming, you wouldn't just jump into the Pacific Ocean. You would get some swimming lessons first. Being curious is okay. Wanting to learn more about relationship design is okay. It doesn't mean you're going to open up and be polyamorous tomorrow. It means you're going to inform yourself about what's really available out there so you can actually make an active and educated decision about your relationship, which may end up very well being exactly the same structure that you've got right now, but now it's a choice.
Well, thank you for the conversation, Ali Iseman, Passport to Pleasure. Uh, Very interesting Substack. There's all kinds of offerings. There's I don't know, it's just very interesting. I've learned a lot, and thank you very much for
Yeah.
your time.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, you can find my inclusive relationship advice column there. It's anonymous questions from real readers, inclusive of all relationship styles. I've got my podcast, Open Dialogue, with a bunch of other amazing experts in various fields of love, sex, and relationships. And yeah, I'm a nerd. I share really science-backed, data-driven videos every week about different relationship skills and different things that I'm just nerding out about. So I'd love to hear from you, and I really appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely. It's a very interesting world you live in, and I think a lot of people will enjoy subscribing to your Substack and learning more about your offerings. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.